The most common contractual mistakes. Episode 4, Smart Contracts. What is so smart about them? Part of the series Global Business Law in 20 Minutes with Federico Vazzoli.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Hello and welcome. I am Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And hi everyone, Mac Pierre-Louis here, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And hi everyone, I'm Federico Vazzoli, Italian lawyer with offices in Vietnam, Malta, and Singapore.
It's great to see you again and to discuss something which is absolutely catchy these days, meaning smart contracts. We have smartwatches, we have smartphones, but can we also have smart contracts? In this episode, we are trying to cover another tiny niche of the business worldwide that is connected with this very word, smart contracts. And my first questions goes to Federico. So what are smart contracts? Are they really contracts and are they really smart?
Thank you for your question, Natalia. It is great to be here with you and Mac and our viewers and listeners. Not really. It is a term. So what is smart about smart contracts is the people that are behind the coding for smart contracts themselves. So the coders and, of course, the lawyers that work hand in hand with coders in order to give the right instructions to the machines. But rather than using the term smart contract, I would say self-executing task that could or could not have legal implications. So we need to go a bit in depth with the definitions here. We lawyers love definitions. So what is generally called as a smart contract? A smart contract is a term that is used to describe computer codes that automatically execute all or parts of an agreement and is stored on a blockchain-based platform. So there's a lot to digest here. It is a code, so it is an instruction that is given to a computer. If this happens, then this will be triggered. This is the automation. This is the smart part of it. Then there is the blockchain. What is a blockchain? Big topic. I would like to apologize with all the IT experts that are listening and watching to us and watching us, but I'm going to use very, very, very overly simplified terms here. But essentially, a blockchain is a distributed database. Those of you that are watching us on YouTube are connecting to the YouTube server or servers, probably. I'm sure, of course, YouTube has more than one server, evidently. But the way the chain, the database, the way information flows between your computer, your smartphone, and YouTube servers is through a server, YouTube's, and your computer, your iPhone, your Samsung, your whatever. The way this works is relatively old vis-a-vis blockchains. In blockchains, all the nodes, all the computers that connect to each other are at the same time servers and clients. What does that mean? It means that every single node in the chain creates a block that evaluates whether you have the right to do something or not. So, for instance, do you have the right to download this episode? Do you have the right to stream this episode? Think about pirated music and videos. This is a very good example. If the information is that on one specific blockchain, you cannot spend that video, that piece of music, that cryptocurrency more than once, then the rest of the nodes of the blockchain will prevent you from executing for a second or third or whatever time that said operation. But you have to tell them not to do so. So that is where you have smart people, IT nerds, that are those behind the coding that tells you to do this and that tells the computer to do this and that. So what is smart about smart contracts is, of course, the people and the fact that they automate, they simplify procedures. It's simplified, automated procedures that could or could not be part of a legal agreement. So that is where the term contract steps in. Is there an agreement? So why would the computer, why would the blockchain-based information execute a certain task? Did we agree on that? Was there a specific written, valid, enforceable agreement as we discussed in previous episodes? Maybe yes, maybe no. But this is essentially what a smart contract is. It is an automated task. If X happens, then Y will be triggered. If X does not happen, then Y will not be triggered. And as you can imagine, it is not as simple. It's not just X and Y. It is a plethora of different types of information.
So this requires, when you say smart people, yes, it requires a lot of thinking through of conditions, right? This is conditions-based programming.
Yes.
So if X happens, then Y happens, if or in reverse, or in vice versa. So whenever I think of this subject, I think of other things that we do to automate our lives and make things simpler, like Zapier, for example, right? It's a small little program you can use to trigger things in sequence so that you can live a simpler life and let the computer worry about it. And so when we talk about smart contracts, we're really talking about trying to have the contract that we've always wanted be able to clean itself up, create itself, cause certain things to happen, and protect the parties. So can you give one or two examples of a smart contract that actually works?
The simplest example that I could make, I'm not going to give out names, but the simplest smart contract that I could think of is payment terms. So if the buyer receives typically cryptocurrency, but it could be fiat money, then the goods are delivered automatically. We always find ourselves, lawyers, but also business people, in this conundrum. Should money arrive before the goods are dispatched or the other way around? So do I want to see the goods first and then I pay, or do I need to pay first before the goods are delivered to me? With a smart contract, there is no discrepancy in time. That is, the smart contract, that is the automated task, happens on its own. If the money arrives, then the goods are delivered, and the other way around. So the two things happen simultaneously. If one does not happen, the other one does not happen. So in this case, even if you could imagine of a situation where payment is made immediately, for instance, at a supermarket, imagine the old days when you wouldn't pay online and you would queue at the supermarket. I still do it from time to time. You go to the supermarket, you still have to wait for the credit card transaction to be approved by the machine. Maybe it is declined. Maybe the POS does not work, or you need to take cash out and pay and get your change back, and all these operations that require time. So even in a situation like that, where yes, you have the goods, but you cannot possibly go out of the supermarket without paying unless you're a thief, there is a break in time because you need to wait for the transaction to actually happen, to be concluded. With a smart contract, that is avoided. That is easier. And that is where blockchains and cryptocurrencies are cool, because they solve certain existing problems and they function where they function. Sorry for the tautology. Is it even a word, tautology? But anyway, for saying the same thing. But it is really like that. When regulators worry about cryptocurrencies and blockchains in general, the worry is that they are scams. And indeed, there have been so many scams around. However, when they solve a problem, think about an international payment. We talked about the supermarket, which is a pretty easy task. We may not need these instruments, even though blockchains can be very useful for tracing products. This is another topic. But in international transactions, when you're, for instance, waiting for money that has to be sent to you from the other end of the world, it happened to me. I had to receive a payment from a client in a faraway country to Vietnam. And it took several days for the banks to process the payment. And of course, it took me bank fee to pay. So I didn't receive the entire, or the other person, the client that paid, would have paid more than the client would have to pay for, plus currency exchange fees, currency exchange rates, and so on and so forth. With a cryptocurrency, you avoid all this because the transfer is immediate. Commissions are not so high. Yes, you do have exchanges that apply, crypto exchanges that apply their fees. That goes without saying, otherwise it wouldn't survive. But they're much lower than ordinary banks. And you don't have a currency trading system because you don't have an exchange rate for crypto. You do between different cryptocurrencies, and you have it between cryptocurrencies and fiat. But if I ask you for one Bitcoin, you pay me one Bitcoin, it is still the same currency. It's like you ask me for $1, I give you $1. It is the same. So these are those instances where cryptocurrencies do work and do give an advantage to the community, largely speaking. But I guess we are drifting a little bit away from the main theme of smart contracts here.
So back to smart contracts, and thank you for this detailed explanation. If it all looks so well, so tightly developed, so smart, is it really a way to avoid disputes, or does this business of smart contracts generate disputes at all?
It does generate disputes, of course. It is in human nature. It kind of reminds me of the age of positivism, back in the days when philosophers thought that lawyers, and especially judges, would automatically apply the law like machines, like human machines, and then justice will be served. And you wouldn't need interpretation. You would just need to apply the law, the letter of the law. Well, the laws are written by politicians. We all know what we think about politicians most of the times. And they are interpreted by lawyers, by judges. They are by judges, it's mediators, etc. So eventually it's a human environment where humans make mistakes and they have their own mind, their own soul, their own sensitivity. And the same applies to smart contracts. So it is a matter of actually drafting the code with the help of a lawyer that understands these matters, with the right coders, to be able to try and avoid disputes exactly in the same fashion that you would do with a handwritten agreement. But the situations are pretty much similar. Now, of course, these instances are complicated by the fact that if you have a coder that prepares a smart contract for you, it could fall into the definition of a one-sided agreement or an agreement that is already pre-prepared by one of the contractual parties, therefore not giving the other party the possibility to negotiate the single clauses. Pretty much like when you buy a SIM card or you open a bank account. A big company, a big bank or a big telecommunication company already prepares the agreement for you, and you cannot realistically negotiate the terms, and therefore you have consumer protections, legislations, and all these sorts of interventions by the legislature to try and curb these aspects. But yes, indeed, there are disputes, and of course, the main theme once again is jurisdiction. What is the applicable law and jurisdiction in a dispute involving parties from all over the world that have a dispute stemming from the execution of a smart contract?
Thank you. So let's say you have two parties, they come into some kind of agreement through a smart contract. What type of problems do you see that could arise where one of them would find themselves needing to go to a mediation or needing to go to court and fight it out? Because we've been talking mainly about the benefits, right, that smart contracts provide. But what are some of the downsides or some of the negative pitfalls that you might see?
I see a few, namely the lack of human interaction. If you have a machine or if you have a human that behaves like a machine, it is difficult to tweak small things that could result into an avalanche. ultimately. It is also a matter of damages and what the investors that own the idea, the project, can pay. I'll give you an example. It is perhaps an outdated example because nowadays ICOs, initial coin offerings, are not as popular as they used to be. Now you have decentralized finance and you have applications of blockchains and cryptocurrencies. You don't really have as many projects where some entrepreneurs would have an idea and would ask you to buy their coins in exchange for fiat money through an ICO or a pre-ICO. But still, it is still a valid example. If you have a company or even a single individual with his or her limited assets, but let's say a company because it's an easier example. You have jurisdictions where a company can be capitalized only with $1. Imagine this company raises or transacts. Let's forget about raising. Let's imagine that this company turns over millions and millions of dollars. Imagine something goes wrong. Who pays? If the company is capitalized for only $1 and is not properly insured and is not regulated, and this is why regulators are running to regulate these businesses, then it will be difficult for those that suffer damages to actually see their positions restored, to see damages paid. So that is where I see problems in the opacity of the system that is behind, and in the fact that if you're liaising just with a bot, it is at times difficult to tweak a situation for the better. So pros and cons, like with everything, it's a cool instrument. And there is a lot of work for lawyers to do. And luckily, legislators are stepping in. So I hope that, and in fact, there will be, there is already a draft regulation by the European Union on artificial intelligence, because the two things go, of course, hand in hand. If the machine can learn, if you have a machine that works with artificial intelligence, can learn from behavior, etc., then it can implement perhaps the smart contract, especially with the development of technology. So the European Union is trying to regulate artificial intelligence. Other regulators have already stepped in. I'm thinking about Singapore, of course, the UK, and many others. The Securities and Exchange Commission, for instance. So especially in regulated industries like finance, you have local bodies that have stepped in. So I feel relieved by the fact that there are tighter regulations. At times too tight, at times it takes too long to obtain your license after you have gone through the application procedure, but that's a different topic. At least we're not in the wild, wild west anymore. We have rules in most jurisdictions.
Thank you for that, Federico. And closing up, in order to ensure that we are actually following the title of our series, so we are doing a global business within 20 minutes. To me, it seems that unknowingly, unwillingly, most of us are now engaged in the world of smart contracts. We do purchases in the internet using the system. So in a way, you also mentioned consumer protection is a key thing here. But as this operational method takes place in the internet and music servers, electronic space, also the dispute resolution will be shifted into this system for sure. And I hope we'll be touching on that in our next series. And thank you for today, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.